It says, "V'yom hashvi'i mishabech l'omer," like the seventh day.
The seventh day itself praises.
Self-praising.
Yeah.
Where does it come from?
So there's actually a lot in Midrash Rabbah about Shabbat having its own personality, as like its own being. Okay, Shabbat comes and says Sunday has Monday, Tuesday has Wednesday, Thursday has Friday. Who do I have? And says Am Yisrael is your partner, right? As in like the neshama of Am Yisrael itself is connected to Shabbat. And Shabbat in general, we can do a whole class on Shabbat. My second daughter's name is Shabbat, right? And when we gave her the name, part of the discussion around it is Shabbat doesn't belong of this. It isn't of this realm. It is of Gan Eden, right? It's the last thing that we have remaining from there, and it brings peace and calmness even when there's chaos around. You have Shabbat, right? Rav Shlomo Karlebach said Shabbat. I think this is the Gemara from Kovrim said this beforehand. Said more than Am Yisrael were kept the Shabbat keeps Am Yisrael. Rav Shlomo Karlebach says, imagine you were born with a limp, right? You're limping. So if you're limping your entire life, eventually you're going to stop trying to walk normal. But if every week you had one day that you're not limping, says you would never stop trying, even during the week. You would never stop to try to walk normal because you know that there's a potential to not. Says the reason we survive the Holocaust is because on Shabbat we're enslaved. Our bodies are enslaved. We're being forced to work. Right? He's a Holocaust survivor himself, and he says when you look at it, he says we should have just been broken. Our heart should have just completely broken. But we had Shabbat, and Shabbat says my neshama is free. Right? You can cage my body, you can't cage my soul. Why can't you cage my soul? Because I have one day a week that I'm not in this world. I'm not in this realm. Right? When the Tzemach Tzedek had this, it was when he was the Tzemach Tzedek was one of the big rabbis of Chabad. I don't remember which number, 3, 4, of Chabad. And at the same time, one of the rabbis from a different Chassidut wanted to hear how he would get ready for Shabbat. So he sent one of his students to get special permission to be with the Tzemach Tzedek before the entrance of Shabbat. And you would assume, one of the biggest rabbis of the generation is sending to the other biggest rabbi of the generation, you're going to assume that he's sitting, going over the Parsha, praying, going to mikveh, right? Like all of the things that you would expect the rabbis to do. And he's sitting outside on his porch, smoking a pipe, right? He sits there, he's smoking a pipe, slowly. And when it's going into candle lighting, he's still outside smoking the pipe, and you have 18 minutes from when candle lighting until Shabbat actually comes in, and he puts it out, and he calls the student there, and he says, look at the sky. Can you see the clouds of the weekday making room for the clouds of Shabbos? Can you see the sky physically changing? The sky changes, the world changes, the birds are not singing the same songs anymore. It says, are you in tuned enough to hear it? Are you in tuned enough to see it? Right? Because the world is actually changing. Right? How do we greet each other? Shabbat Shalom. A day of peace. Right? A day of peace. The world right now, everything else gets put aside. Because my neshama has been enslaved by my body the entire week. I am forced to eat and sleep and work and do all of these other things, right? To be able to exist in this world. But my neshama cries out the entire week and says, I'm caged in here. This was not the reason you came to the world. You didn't come into the world to party. You came into the world to elevate me. How have you forgotten about me, right? We refer to our body like how you would refer to your car. It's the vessel that takes you from place to place. So if it's a vessel to take you from place to place, shouldn't you be more concerned about yourself than about, your car? Shouldn't you be more concerned about what you're putting in your body as opposed to what fuel you're putting in your car? The reality is most people eat junk food and put the best fuel in their car. Okay? Also in the metaphor and also in reality, right? Because we forget, right? We'll finish with the joke of, there was a Wall Street businessman is parking his car. He opens up the door and another car passes by and knocks the door right off, and with it his hand gets ripped off, and he's out there screaming, my car, what has he done to my car? Someone came over to him and said, forget the car, your hand. He says, oh, my Rolex, right? So some people just never change. All right, we'll see you all on Shabbat.